Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Hegseth, welcome.
Thank you.
I am focused on your fitness to serve, including your character and temperament and your overall qualifications to do the job. And I do appreciate the comments of Ranking Member Reed with his concerns regarding your nomination, because I share those concerns. As part of my responsibility as a member of this committee to ensure the fitness of all nominees to come before any of the committees on which I sit, I ask the following two initial questions. First, since you became a legal adult, have you ever made unwanted requests for sexual favors or committed any verbal or physical harassment or assault of a sexual nature?
No, Senator.
Have you ever faced discipline or entered into a settlement relating to this kind of conduct?
Senator, I was falsely accused in October of 2017. It was fully investigated, and I was completely cleared.
I don't think completely cleared is accurate, but the fact is that your own lawyer said that you entered into an NDA and paid a person who accused you of raping her a sum of money to make sure that she did not file a complaint. Moving on. As Secretary, you will be in charge of maintaining good order and discipline by enforcing the Uniform Code of Military Justice, UCMJ. In addition to the sexual assault allegations, and by the way, the answer to my second question should have been yes. I have read multiple reports of your regularly being drunk at work, including by people who worked with you at Fox News. Do you know that being drunk at work is prohibited for service members under the UCMJ?
Senator, those
Yes
are
or no?
multiple false anonymous reports peddled by NBC News
you know that
run directly
drinking on the job
contradictory to the dozens of men and women at Fox News Channel who I work with who came on the record and said they've
In your
never
opening
seen
statement,
that.
Mr. Hegseth, you commit to holding leaders accountable at all levels. That includes you, of course. And frankly, as Secretary, you will be on the job 24/7. You recently promised some of my Republican colleagues that you stopped drinking and won't drink if confirmed, correct?
Absolutely.
Will you resign as Secretary of Defense if you drink on the job, which is a 24/7 position?
I've made this commitment on behalf of
Will
the
you
men and women I'm
resign
serving.
as Secretary of Defense
I've
if
made this
you
commitment
drink
on
on the
behalf of
job?
the men and women I'm serving
I'm not
because it's the
hearing-
most important deployment
I'm not
of my
hearing an
life.
answer to my question, so I'm going to move on. While you have made that commitment, you will not commit to resigning if you drink on the job. As Secretary of Defense, you will swear an oath to the Constitution and not an oath to any man, woman, or president, correct?
Senator, on multiple occasions, including as a young second lieutenant, I have sworn an oath to the
Answer is
Constitution,
yes.
and I'm proud to do so. Yes, ma'am.
In June of 2020, then President Trump directed former Secretary of Defense Mark Esper to shoot protesters in the legs in downtown D.C., an order Secretary Esper refused to comply with. Would you carry out such an order from President Trump?
Senator, I was in the Washington, D.C. National Guard unit that was in Lafayette Square during those
Would you
events,
carry
holding
out
a
an
riot
order to
shield on
shoot
behalf of my
protesters
country.
in the legs?
I saw 50
as
Secret
directed
Service agents get injured
Secretary
by
Esper?
rioters trying to jump over the fence, set
Again,
the church on fire, and destroy
You know
a
what?
statue.
That sounds to me that you will
Chaos.
comply with such an order. You will shoot protesters in the leg. Moving on. President-elect has attacked our allies in recent weeks, refusing to rule out using military force to take over Greenland and the Panama Canal, and threatening to make Canada the 51st state. Would you carry out an order from President Trump to seize Greenland, a territory of our NATO ally Denmark, by force, or would you comply with an order to take over the Panama Canal?
Senator, I will emphasize that President Trump received 77 million votes to be the lawful
We're
commander-in-chief
not
of
talking
this
about
country.
the election. My question is, would you use our military to take over Greenland or an ally of Denmark?
Senator, one of the things that President Trump is so good at is never strategically tipping his hand. And so I would never in this public forum give one way or another,
So
direct what orders
that
the president would
sounds
give
to
me in
me-
any
That
context.
sounds to me that you would contemplate carrying out such an order to basically invade Greenland and take over the Panama Canal. Current DoD policy allows service members and eligible dependents to be reimbursed for travel associated with non-covered reproductive health care, including abortions. Will you maintain this common sense policy?
Senator, I've always been personally pro-life. I know President Trump has as well, and we will review all policies, but our standard is whatever the president wants on this particular
Okay,
issue
so
with my advice, I will take a
if the
look at.
president
But
tells you that this
I don't
common
believe
sense
the federal-
policy will not be maintained, you will not enable our service members to seek reproductive care. So it
I
sounds
don't
like to
believe the
me.
federal government
I'm not
should be
hearing
funding
answers to my questions,
travel for
Mr.
abortion.
Chairman. I just want to note that the other area that of serious concern to me is President Trump saying that he wants to use the military to help with mass deportations, which will cost billions of dollars. And what that will do to readiness is very, very concerning. Mr. Hexix, I have noticed a disturbing pattern. You previously have made a series of inflammatory statements about women in combat, LGBTQ service members, Muslim Americans, and Democrats. Since your nominations, however, you have walked those back on TV in interviews and most recently in your opening statements. You are no longer on Fox and Friends, Mr. Hexet. If confirmed, your words, actions, and decisions will have real impacts on national security and our service members' lives. There are close to 3 million personnel in the Department of Defense, $900 billion budget. I hardly think you are prepared to do the job. Thank you, Mr.
Senator,
Chairman.
Thank you. That wasn't a question, Mr. Hexer. Thank you.
Senator Hirono.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome. As part of my responsibilities to ensure the fitness of nominees before any of the committees on which I sit, I asked the following two initial questions. First is, since you became a legal adult, have you ever made unwanted requests for sexual favors or committed any verbal or physical harassment or assault of a sexual nature?
No, Senator, I have not.
Have you ever faced discipline or entered into a settlement related to this kind of conduct?
I have not.
We received your testimony late yesterday, and you noted that, and quote, President Trump's energy dominance vision will end wars abroad, end quote. And President Trump has directed you to expand oil and gas drilling on a massive scale, which will lead to increased burning of fossil fuels. Now, the scientific consensus is that burning fossil fuels is a primary human cause of climate change. In 2017, then Secretary of Defense James Mattis, appointed by then President Trump, told the Senate Armed Services Committee that, quote, climate change is impacting stability in areas of the world where our troops are operating, end quote. In 2014, Secretary of Defense Chuck Hagel said that climate change is a critical national security threat and a threat multiplier. Now, these are two secretaries of defense. They know something about war. Were you aware that they testified before the Senate Armed Services Committee on a number of times that burning more fossil fuel is actually going to not result in the end of wars, but could very well exacerbate and cause wars? Were you aware of this testimony?
Senator, no, I'm not aware of that specific testimony, but I do know that, that within fossil fuels, the concern has been about emissions, and within emissions, we have the technology to do things like carbon capture to eliminate harmful emissions.
Well, the fact of the matter is that you have military leaders who acknowledge that climate change is a major issue. And for you to take the position that, that you're going to engage in active actions that will result in the burning of more fossil fuel, it's troubling. As Secretary of the Interior, It is your duty to see that the department carries out its mission to protect and manage our nation's natural resources and cultural heritage. If you are ordered by the president to act in a manner that is counter to the department's mission or to the Constitution, such as drilling in Bear Ears National Monument, will you do as the president asks? Because he wants to drill in that monument.
Well, Senator, of course, as part of my sworn duty, I'll follow the law and follow the Constitution, and so you can count on that. And I have not heard of anything about President Trump wanting to do anything
Well, he
other
certainly wants to.
than advancing energy production for the benefit of the American people.
We
in a
all know
legal
that
way.
the president wants to drill, baby, drill. And in your testimony, you say that he has a energy dominance vision. So I would ask you that should you be confirmed that you will have these kinds of matters that you'll have to decide, are you going to drill in a monument? Are you going to protect our natural resources? Or are you going to drill, baby, drill? So I raise that as a concern with you going forward. Compacts of free association. Last year, Congress renewed our compacts of free association, and that comes within the purview of Interior. It involves Palau, Micronesia, and the Marshall Islands. I would like to get your commitment to implement the new compacts of free association in accordance with the bipartisan law that was enacted last year.
Well, Senator, these Pacific Islands, in addition to the three that you mentioned that are part of the compact, but also the others that are under the insular areas of Interior, are all critically important to national security for the United States of America. All of them have important military implications. All of these are places where U.S. sailors fought and died during World War II. And with the aggression that China is showing in the Pacific, it's more important that we support them more than ever. I know that Hawaii plays an important role, including in things like with medical care for those residents of those islands, and I think it's important that the federal government does its share as opposed to putting the load on the state.
Thank you. It sounds as though you have familiarity with the compacts, for which I am gratified. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mississippi young man, I joined the Air Force and was stationed at Seymour Johnson Air Force Base in Goldsboro, North Carolina. You would agree, would you not, that Eastern North Carolina barbecue is far superior to Lexington type barbecue?
I would ask you not to answer the question, sir.
So as someone from Western North Carolina, Senator, my heart bleeds the thick ketchup-based barbecue that I grew up with, but I can concede that Lexington barbecue is exceptional.
Well, there's no accounting for taste, but a pretty good answer. Senator Hirono.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I did want to take a moment to extend my condolences to all those affected by the tragic accident last night near Reagan National Airport and the brave Army soldiers on board the helicopter. Mr. Driscoll, I asked the following two initial questions of all nominees to come before any of the committees on which I sit to ensure the fitness of the nominees. Since you became a legal adult, have you ever made unwanted requests for sexual favors or committed any verbal or physical harassment or assault of a sexual nature?
Never.
Have you ever faced discipline or entered into a settlement relating to this kind of conduct?
Never.
Mr. Driscoll, several of the critical training areas that the Army uses in Hawaii are leased from the state, including Pohakaloa, and the leases are set to expire in 2029. These leases are vital to ensuring military forces can adequately train in the Pacific. However, the land involved also holds cultural significance to the Native Hawaiian community. How do you plan to approach these important lease renegotiations? And will you commit to engaging in good faith with state officials and the community to ensure that the leases are negotiated in a way that is fair to the state, the people of Hawaii, and the military?
Senator, this is an incredibly important issue, not just in Hawaii, but in all the places we engage with the community and sign leases. I would absolutely commit to wanting to work with your office and then to engage with community members to ensure the Army is being its best neighbor that it can be. Earlier in the hearing, I was referencing with your colleague that Senator Warren and I were chatting about this, both kind of abroad, how the Army exists in its footprint, but then specifically domestically, how the Army and its soldiers and the civilians that work on the bases engage with the community and the youth in that community is directly correlated to who gets a taste of what the Army has to offer and who gets to see what a life in the Army can do for them. And so I think it is both the right thing to do and the selfish thing to do to be the best community members we can be.
I want to particularly emphasize how important these negotiations are and how they are conducted, because the military of late has been criticized for what happened at Red Hill, basically involving the Navy. But as far as the community is concerned, what happens to one service is something that impacts all of the other services. So it is really critical that you engage with the community. So going to modernizing DoD infrastructure is one of my top priorities, and the Army has a deep backlog of maintenance and modernization for its facilities. And sadly, for example, in Hawaii, 50% of Army facilities are classified as failing or failed, and the cost to repair or replace them is over $5 billion. This is just involving Hawaii. So we need to have a functioning infrastructure critical to military readiness. How are you planning to address the Army's infrastructure issue in Hawaii and in the greater Indo-Pacific?
Senator, I've had many friends stationed in Hawaii, and though the experience has been good, I think that they might echo that some of the maintenance issues exist. We owe a duty to our soldiers and their families. My daughter, my 6-year-old Lila, is named after my E6's daughter, Lila. She lives on military.
So, Mr. Driscoll, my time is running out, and so what I am getting from you is that there is a commitment to deal with the lagging infrastructure throughout the military in the Army. So I will certainly be holding you to that, should you be confirmed. Let me get to mass deportations. President Trump has already ordered thousands of additional Army soldiers to the southern border. Experts have said deporting over 11 million people, these are the people who are undocumented, will require tens of thousands of personnel, hundreds of billions of dollars, and years to complete. The Army is the primary military service who would be called upon to support a mass deportation order. What impact would deploying tens of thousands of troops have on Army readiness?
Senator, my understanding from the outside is that the Army stands by and stands ready to support the president's mission to defend the border.
Well, if you have to deploy 10,000 people or more from the Army to do that, I would say that it is going to impact Army readiness for the other purposes for which the Army is stood up. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Without risk,
Yes.
correct?
Yes, Senator, 100%.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you, Senator Fisher. Senator Hirono.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Feinberg, welcome to you and your family. I asked the following two initial questions of all nominees before any of my committees to address the fitness to serve. Since you became a legal adult, have you ever made unwanted requests for sexual favors or committed any verbal or physical harassment or assault of a sexual nature?
No,
Have you ever faced discipline or entered into a settlement relating to this kind of conduct?
no,
Now, the DOD will need to cut some 8% off its budget, and again, we wonder how that happens when at the same time other parts of the budget is being increased. But a lot of those cuts, I think, will come from the workforce, which I think we acknowledge is a critical part of our readiness. So here we see that some 5,400 people have already been or will soon be let go from DOD. And these are people who are in probationary status. These are not people getting ready to retire. In fact, across the many departments, people on probation are being let go, 1,000 in DOJ, 250 in SBA. So these are cuts that are happening across the board, not based on any analysis of impact. And there are some 55,000 people on probation within the DOD, and I think the expectation is that many of them will be also let go. There are some 350 people in probationary status at Pearl Harbor Naval Shipyard. And so these are critical people in our shipyards, as also mentioned by my colleague, Senator Shaheen. So since all of these cuts are being made without any kind of analysis, don't you have a concern about our ability to, that these cuts will have an impact on readiness?
Well, most of the substantial cuts that they're talking about are yet to happen.
Yes, as I mentioned, though, they're happening in those in the probationary status. These are people who just got hired, who are just being trained to serve.
Yeah, so, I've spent a career in restructuring companies and dealing with these workforce issues. If I can get through confirmation, I do think I can add some real value, working with the Secretary, of course, in the process to do that properly, fairly, with the right people. Every organization goes through some turnover when you have really needs to improve. Initially, it's difficult, but the top people will step up, and it can be ultimately improving the culture.
As I mentioned, these are not based on any kind of analysis that you would normally do in the civilian sector, which you are very familiar with. I hardly think that in your business you would just start getting rid of people across the board, especially new hires who presumably went through the process of vetting. Now, regarding the concerns about the purging of senior military officers, I too have the concern. Let me just ask you a series of questions that I expect either a yes or no answer. Do you believe it is important that senior military officers be able to provide their best military advice regardless of politics and without fear of reprisal?
Yes.
Do you believe that it is important that uniformed JAG officers feel free to provide their best legal advice on the fair administration of military justice and compliance with the law of armed conflict?
Yes.
Do you believe in the independence of the inspectors general to root out fraud, waste, and abuse?
Yes.
We are concerned about the summary cuts to USAID, and we're talking about thousands of people who were providing services to not just very important to our own country, but obviously to our allies. Mr. Feinberg, do you agree that gutting USAID funding and personnel endangers our interests around the globe, especially in the Indo-Pacific?
I don't know. I don't have all the facts and knowledge about USAID and what the considerations were in making those decisions, but I do trust the Secretary and the President's judgment on that.
Wouldn't you say that if you were a country or including island nations who receive USAID funds, this kind of cut would be shocking and would have negative impacts on their economy and their people?
Thank you very much, Senator
I'd say the answer has to be yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Hirono. Senator Rounds.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Feinberg, first of all, thank you for the opportunity to visit.
Senator Hirono.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome, Mr. Colby, to you and your family. I asked the following two initial questions with relevance to fitness to serve. So I'll ask you, since you became a legal adult, have you ever made unwanted requests for sexual favors or committed any verbal or physical harassment or assault of a sexual nature?
I have not, Senator.
Have you ever faced discipline or entered into a settlement relating to this kind of conduct?
I have not, Senator.
I think it's interesting that you would not say whether Russia invaded Ukraine and that saying that this is a complicated kind of a situation right now. But I think I also heard you say that you would give the president your best advice regardless of what you think he might want to hear. So I'm going to ask you a simple question. Relating to whether Russian military forces invaded Ukraine. In February 2022, did Russian forces cross the border and invade Ukraine, yes or no?
Well, Senator, you're describing a factual reality that is demonstrably true.
Yes, so that would mean that Russia invaded Ukraine. So that was a question that you would not answer. I think that's pretty important because if we care about what Xi Jinping thinks about what this president does and thinks, and if Xi Jinping thinks that we have a president who does not separate fact from fiction, such as who invaded Ukraine, I would think that maybe President Xi has conclusions that he would draw, maybe having to do with, as our ranking member said, U.S. fecklessness. And I also think that one of the reasons that our NATO allies are increasing their spending on military is that they do not think that they have a particularly stable partner in the U.S., and therefore they better look to their own interests because they can no longer rely on the U.S. I think that is a very bad situation for the United States to be in, especially as we identify China as a pacing threat, and also whatever Russia is thinking along these lines, they think that they now have a friend in the president. I don't think that helps us vis-a-vis our strength regarding Russia, regarding China. In fact, I think that we are placing ourselves in a very weakened position with regard to how we are viewed by our adversaries, that would be China as well as Russia, and our allies alike. Not a good situation to be in. We need a president who can separate fact from fiction. Let me move on. Since the administration has identified China as a pacing threat and the importance of Indo-PACOM to face that threat, would you agree with that?
Yes, I think the department has identified China as the pacing
So,
threat, as I understand.
but Indo-PACOM provided Congress with an $11 billion unfunded priorities list. And this says to me that there is a misalignment of our funding decisions and strategy if we consider Indo-PACOM to be a priority, and yet you have Indo-PACOM putting forward an $11 billion unfunded priorities. What would you do to decrease the unfunded priorities and align our strategy and the importance of Indo-PACOM with the resources that it gets? And would you agree that maybe we should provide Indo-PACOM with more direct input into the department's budgeting and resourcing priorities?
Well, Senator, what I'd like to say
Process.
is, if I may, is I think this is exactly the kind of baseline reality that I think so much of my strategic argumentation proceeds from. A lot of what I'm saying is that many of us in the public debate and so forth are acting as if we can do everything, but the reality is that there's an $11 billion unfunded priority list from Indo-PACOM, and realistically, I bet the real deficit is even higher, given that that's just what came out. So, Senator, if confirmed, I would make it an absolute priority, given the priority that China must get across administrations. I think this is now a matter of strategic consensus to try to not only drive that down, but to reform the department and reprioritize it, to actually go through and carry out the strategic shift that's been talked about in some ways since probably Bob Work was Deputy Secretary of Defense at the end of the Obama administration.
So would you agree that Indo-PACOM, that command should be provided with more direct input into the department's budgeting and resourcing process?
Senator, I don't have enough information to say specifically organizationally where I would fall on that, but certainly that perspective needs to get, I would say, an elevated.
I hope so, because an 11 billion unfunded priority, that is the largest
Indeed.
unfunded priority list of any of our combatant commands. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And thank you. Thank you very much, Senator Budd. Senator Hirono.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome to both of you and your families. Going to the fitness to serve question, I asked the following two initial questions of all nominees before any of the committees on which I sit. So I will ask you, we'll start with Mr. Cadenazzi. Since you became a legal adult, have you ever made unwanted requests for sexual favors or committed any verbal or physical harassment or assault of a sexual nature?
No.
Mr. Rapano? Admiral?
No.
Have you ever faced discipline or entered into a settlement relating to this kind of conduct?
No. No.
For Mr. Cadenazzi, I championed a provision in last year's NDAA that created a program focused on advanced manufacturing capabilities in the Indo-Pacific to more quickly construct unmanned systems and parts for ships and submarine repairs. And this program is essential to bolstering deterrence in the region. DoD and the services have always struggled to coordinate industrial-based modernization efforts. How do you plan to foster greater integration across the services for this important program?
Senator, I appreciate the question. This is a critical issue. Hawaii represents a significant portion of the organic industrial base and our broader defense industrial base. There are many tools we have to bring alignment across the industrial base initiatives that are there and the groups that are responsible for it. The first thing is leadership. That is the wherewithal to go ahead and get into the weeds. The macro issues, I think, thankfully, there's a substantial number of authorities and resources available that have been made available by the Congress over time to the DoD to take action on these issues. At the micro level, we need to get into the details to understand where individual organizations may not be getting it with regards to the opportunities here. In particular, the new, I think, acquisition and industrial base executive order does a good job to highlight the acquisition personnel workforce training initiatives and things that we can do to go ahead and drive more understanding into the leaders at the tactical level who need to make decisions to invest in the integration of the industrial base.
I hope that you will focus on this aspect of what we need to do, because I know you are aware that Indo-Pacific is the largest AOR, and we need to provide flexibilities when the ships are out to sea, and they need to have flexibility in repair and doing all the things that will keep them going. So I hope that you'll visit Hawaii and see for yourself the capabilities that we need to strengthen. Again, for you, I have met with small businesses in the past as they struggle to comply with the requirements to meet the cybersecurity maturity model certification requirements, and it's pretty complicated. And they have a hard time complying, as I said. So I am prioritizing a provision in this year's NDAA that would require the DoD to provide additional support and innovative tools for small businesses to ensure that they are aligned with DoD's CMMC requirements, allowing them to save money and contribute to diversifying the defense industrial base that you are very focused on strengthening. What are your thoughts on the provision that would require DoD to provide more assistance to small businesses to enable them to work with you all?
Senator, this is a critical topic, and it has been a bit of a roadblock for small businesses over time. It's great that you're bringing this issue up. Within the Small Business Office, within the Industrial Base Policy Office, there's a program called Project Spectrum, which is intended to go out to small businesses that are operating in the defense sector to help them go ahead and get the resources and understanding and analysis they need to accelerate and reduce the cost of their compliance with CMMC. If confirmed, I'm eager to work with you on this provision, your proposals going forward. I think anything we can do to streamline the requirements while also ensuring a more robust and resilient security and base for our cyber infrastructure is a critical opportunity for the department, and we should look at that.
Should you be confirmed, as I believe you will be, that I would like to work with you on how we can better strengthen this part of our supply chain, because without our small businesses, many of whom are dropping out of working with the DoD for a number of reasons, including complying with the security requirements. So this is something that I would want to be very specific in following up with you. One more question for you. The COVID-19 pandemic and geopolitical competition with China has exposed the deep fragilities in the U.S. defense supply chain, as we mentioned. So, for example, we remain heavily reliant on foreign sources for critical earth elements. So what steps do you plan to take to address this significant issue?
Senator, I appreciate the question. The issue of access to raw materials, rare earths in particular, is one that is particularly challenging. The Industrial Place Policy Office has invested over $540 million in the past on these topics. I think we need to accelerate and invigorate those investments, but also align them to the most critical and impactful opportunities that'll have the most impact on our most critical near-term needs, whether that's munitions, lethality, or readiness. We should make those decisions and those investments promptly and get them moving so we can see the impact as soon as possible. If confirmed, I look forward to work with you on that issue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator.